Hi everyone, I hope y'all are doing okay and welcome back to Perkins Custom Swimbaits YouTube channel. Appreciate y'all taking some time to watch today's video. So in today's video what I want to go over is my 2024 rod and reel lineup for the Swimbaits. So I am looking towards maybe buying another rod and reel here in the near future, but as of right now this is kind of where the rod and reel lineup stands. So let's just hop right into it. And throughout the way, I'll try to do my best as far as giving, why I use certain rod and reels and for which purpose, which baits, things of that nature. So let's hop right into it with the first rod and reel. So rod number one and reel number one, this is the Daiwa Tatula 200 in the 6.4, 6.3 gear ratio, matched up with the 7'3" Daiwa Tatula Swimbait Rod. So, dogs are outside with me today and they're excited to get to be out in the sunny weather. But going back to the rod, so this rod is rated up to, max of 4 ounces. So, and it's only a 7'3", so it's kind of small. And the reel itself just being a 200. So for me personally, I only use the 200 size class reels really on that 3 ounce and down. Down meaning, going 2, 1, something like that. I like to stay on the lighter end of the baits with the smaller reels. It just helps protect the reel a little bit better so you don't go through as many. But it's been a great rod and reel last year. I put in quite a bit of time with it. Truly love this rod for throwing like the Alabama rig on, and I really like it for a mag draft. The 6-inch mag draft, I had a lot of time using this rod on, and it's a phenomenal rod to throw the 6-inch mag draft. Now, with that being said, by no means do you need a dedicated swim bait rod to throw a 6-inch mag draft. You can really get by with just a dedicated jig rod. It's a great rod for the mag draft. So on the reel, because I have that 6'3" to 1, the reason that I do that is because with like your Alabama rig, your mag draft, I do use some of my crank downs on this. So the Jethro crank down, a couple of the Hot Rod Shad crank downs, I use that for this kind of gear ratio. So just, thinking about it from that point of view, 6'3" to 1, something of that nature, slower gear ratio, I want that slower moving bait typically. But with it being a 200 size reel, the key there is lighter on the baits. I try to stay 3 ounces and lighter for the 200 size reels. So that's the first rod in the lineup. It's a great rod. Like I said, I really enjoy this rod, and truth be told, I'm really enjoying this rod, especially when you're trying to skip with it. Because it is a 7'3", and you can get all the way up to 3 ounces, so you don't really have to worry about like the 8-inch mag draft, because it can definitely handle it. But what it can do is, because it's got that really nice shorter length overall, you can really skip a bait way underneath the dock, in between tree limbs, different things of that nature. So it's just been a really good rod for all those kind of purposes, as well as the Alabama rig, and it handles fish great. It's got a really nice bend in it. It is listed as a, it doesn't really say what it is as far as fast or moderate. In my opinion, I would go with like a moderate fast. It's not a true parabolic rod, but it's got a really, really nice tip to where I don't have to worry about treble hooks as bad. This rod is probably too soft for many like big jig hook baits. I would not throw the 68 Huddleston on it, even though where the 68 is probably in that 3-ish ounce class. It could definitely get by with it, but it would just be putting a lot of strain on you to try to set that hook, because it's such a large hook set that you got to try to get. So that is rod number 1 for the 2024 fishing season. Rod and reel number 2. So this is a rod and reel that you all saw during the other rod and reel arsenal video that I did last year. And I did update, or rather not really update, but I changed reels for this rod. So this is the Dobyns Fury. One of what I would consider your budget or beginner level Swimbait rods, excellent rod. This is the rod that I actually caught the 6.5 on last year. It's got a lot of really good memories with it for me. It's a great rod, and it does Alabama rigs phenomenally as well. So 7'9", you know, it's made as a medium heavy fast action. To me, I would consider this more of a parabolic rod. It's not fast enough really to do much of a jig hook, but it does phenomenal with Alabama rigs and like your treble hook baits. So it does great with glide baits and things of that nature. Now with this rod, it's rated 1 to 5 ounces. The sweet spot in there is in that 3-ish, maybe 4. It can handle down in the 2s, like your Alabama rigs typically don't go over 2 ounces as a whole. It'd be great for like a 10XD if you needed it, but it's just a really good rod, 7'9", so you can really get out there. Now, I'm using on this rod, I've got a Shimano Curado. I think this is the K. It's a couple of years old, but it's the 6:3 to 1 gear ratio as well. So we talked about in that Daiwa Tatula combo that I'm using that for my Alabama rigs, you know, crank down, similar things. This rod is used for the exact same thing. I have 2 rods dedicated to a umbrella rig, Alabama rig, small crank downs, and smaller glide baits. As well as, you know, this rod I don't typically throw a mag draft on. It could do it no problem. It's just I like the mag draft on that Tatula better. So typically you're kind of getting to see the theme here as to how I like to set up my rods. I'll have one rod, for example, rigged with the umbrella rig, or the, you know, umbrella Alabama rig. I'll have another one rigged up with a crank down, and then so on and so forth as we kind of go through the lineup. The rods are basically handling about the same weight. The lengths may differ. I do vary that up. These next 3 rods that we're getting ready to get into, those are all 8-footers, but these 2 are my shorter rods, and they are, especially that 7.4 Tatula, if I really want to do skipping, it's just so much more easy to maneuver that one. But now staying on topic with this rod, it's a phenomenal rod. If you're just getting into swim baiting, that's the hard question, if you would go with the 795 or the 806 Dobyns Fury. I would tell you it depends on exactly how big of a bait you want to throw. A lot of swim bait anglers would tell you probably the 806 because it can handle a much wider range of baits. And I agree, it can handle a lot more. It can get up to about 6 ounces, no problem. But the challenge that I have is that I like the way this rod loads up better on a 3-ounce bait if I'm going to throw a 6-inch glide. That gets into the nitty details of things, and everything, I should have prefaced this at the beginning, everything on here is my opinion as to how these rods are and how they work, as well as the reels. But you know, for me personally, I do primarily throw Daiwa reels, and then I have a variety of different rods. But I do have a handful of Shimanos. I really like Shimano. I don't have any problem with Shimanos. They're fantastic reels. I've never had one give me any sort of issues. So it's really just kind of one of those things that I like Daiwa. I am considering, because you can get a Curado 200 in an 8-to-1, I am considering buying one of those. And the reason being is because, you know, and we'll talk about this, but with the chopping style glide baits, I really like an 8-to-1 gear ratio. I haven't tried a 7 yet, so I may end up kind of meeting in the middle and trying a 7 instead of an 8. But we'll see. That is definitely one reel that I'm wanting to try to get this year, is another 200 size in either a 7 or an 8-to-1 gear ratio. And I'd love everyone's opinion on here that has, you know, some of these different reels. If you could, you know, comment down below some of your favorite rod and reel combos that you have personally for fishing the big swim baits, because I'd love to know what your go-to setups are. So that's the Dobyns Fury 795, the 7'9", 5 power. It's on the lighter end between it and the 806, which I'm going to show the 806 next. But 795 Dobyns Fury with a 200 Curado in the 6.3-1. All right, so now we have rod number 3. This is the Dobyns Fury 806. And this is a really nice rod. This was the first swimbait rod that I ever bought. And it still holds up. It throws baits phenomenally. I really like this rod personally for throwing most of my topwater wake baits. A lot of my wake baits are wooden, and they weigh quite a bit, but because this rod has this real nice parabolic action, and that goes for both of the Dobyns Furies, they have a real nice parabolic action, so when they load, they'll really bow deep into the rod blank. And I've been using it a lot for the topwater wakes, and then I've been using it occasionally on some of the glides, but I've got another rod that I'll be showing next that I just enjoy a lot more for, you know, the bigger glides. Or I should say the medium-sized glides. So it's a great rod. I've had no issues out of it. It's strong. It's just a workhorse. You know, it does its job, and it does really well for it. So like I said, I primarily use it for like wake baits. Now, before wake bait season, I guess, but you could argue that you can do wake baits year round. My primary area for this rod is going to be some of your big glides. I do have some of like the wider, the slow winding glides, and I'll probably use it some for that. It's just a good rod for treble hook baits. And on it, I've got the Daiwa Lexa 300. This is the newer, well, I guess it's the new old model. This is not the original, but it's a 6.3-1. And it's got the giant double power handle. I love this power handle. It's got the wind grips on it. Very, very comfortable reel to fish. It's really palms well, and for a 300 size, it's not overly heavy to where it feels like you've got so much on. But once again, for those wake baits, 6.3-1's great. I also really like the Lexas for like my Huddlestons. Anytime that I'm going to slow fish bottom, I really like that 6.3-1. I don't like going all the way down to the 5s just because I would actually have to buy another reel to get to a 5. So primarily, I'm just using the 300 series Lexas in the 6.3-1 gear ratio reels. And they're phenomenal reels. Had no issues whatsoever with these reels. And like I said, they hold up, they're strong. I've had this one for several years now, and it's not giving me any issues. It's just a really good workhorse. So there's that one. Now we'll get into the dedicated Huddleston rod. And the reason I say that is that's primarily what I use that rod for. That rod has two purposes, and one of which is the Huddleston Deluxe. So let me grab that rod. All right, so here is the largest swimbait rod that I own, both by size as well as, you know, just overall, you know, it's a big rod. And it's a very, very thick in the rod's diameter. To me, it feels like it's even larger than like the Dobyns rods. So this is the Daiwa DX Swimbait Rod. As far as rods go, I think it's actually the cheapest of all of the rods. I think it's about $100 for the rod alone. So this is the Daiwa DX Swimbait, extra, extra heavy. It is rated from 4 to 14 ounces. Yes, it's a broomstick. It has got a lot of power. It's got a lot of backbone. This is the rod that I do throw the Huddleston on, as well as the Big Omer Trout Glide, that big 11-inch glide. You need the power behind this rod to be able to support those heavy of baits. The Big Omer Trout weighs somewhere between 6 and 8 ounces. The Huddleston, I think it's about a 6-ounce bait, but you're trying to sink a jig hook. Now, you know, in the previous video that I did about modifying the Hud with the Butch Brown rig, I still have not actually been able to get out on the water to try that. So I've been, you know, been hoping to be able to get back out on the water soon. My boat is actually currently broke down. I've got a wheel bearing that went out and it actually burned up my spindle on my axle. So I'm in the process of getting a new axle put underneath the boat. So until that happens, we're going to be doing a lot of videos here at the house. But yeah, so that's the update on the fishing portion. So we'll get there. It's a work in progress, but we're getting it sorted out. So the reel is I think this is like the Generation 1 Daiwa Lexa, or at least it's one of the older models that I have. It's a 6:3-to-1 Daiwa 300 Lexa. I've had no issues with this. The reason that this was the first swim bait reel that I ever got, and it's just worked phenomenally well. I've had no issues with it, and that's part of the reason I picked up that newer model Lexa. It's a great reel, and it does its job just fine. Can't say anything good or anything bad about either one of these. But the key to it is that when you're looking into rods for these big swim baits, because the rods have to be specialized for the bait, and this is probably the most crucial part of the advice, what you're looking for is about 3 or 4 different things. Number one, I'm going to say, is your style of fishing. And I don't hear many people talk about that, but to me, that is the number one thing that you need to think about when you go looking for a rod, especially with the swim baits, because they are, the baits themselves are expensive, and then you tack on, it's a bigger bait, so your bite count typically goes down because you just don't get as many bites because the bait is so large. But when you get a bite, you typically get the right bite. You get the bite you're looking for. So what I really want to emphasize is the first thing when you're looking into these rods is think about your swim bait style as to what you enjoy fishing. If you're not a glide bait, you know, multi-joint, treble hook bait kind of person, I would probably say, you know, you need to look more into like the fast action rods versus like the parabolic rods. Now that's the same kind of advice that, you know, we would give anyone with like looking for a jig rod versus a crankbait rod. It's the same thing that applies here, except it's just upsized. Everything's upsized. But because it's upsized, it can be challenging to try to find a rod that will actually throw the bait. You know, I've been blessed that I got into this kind of after the California swim bait kicked off and everything like that. So I was able to actually find rods. You know, early back in the day, they would have to use saltwater gear to be able to actually just support the weight of the bait. So first advice is look at your style of fishing. Do you enjoy throwing soft baits, hard baits? And by that, do you mean, do you enjoy throwing treble hook baits or, you know, single jig hook baits? You know, weedless beast, owner beast hooks with, and Huddlestons and things like that? Or do you enjoy throwing the treble hooks, the glides, the multi-joints, like the bull shads, things like that? Because that really determines a lot of it. And then, like I said, second is your style, because each one of these is going to be able to present the bait a little bit differently too. I've got a couple of friends that they also throw big baits, you know, and we've been on the boat together and we fish completely differently. They prefer throwing glide baits on like a 6 and 7 to gear ratio reel. I personally am on the 8-to-1 side of the, you know, of the fence there. So it's all based upon your personal fishing style. So that's why I'm saying take everything that I'm showing you in this video as my personal opinion as to what I've used and what I like. But at the same time, you may have a completely different take on the rod and reel just because your fishing style is different than mine. I don't throw braid very frequently at all on a swim bait. I'm looking into maybe trying that some this year for topwater. If I throw like a like a large topwater walking bait, like, you know, the Mega Bass, I don't know if it's the Mega Dog but it's the big one, the big topwater spook type bait, or the, you know, Black Dog Lure Company, the Lunker Punker, you know, that kind of stuff, that I would throw braid on. But otherwise, I typically throw, you know, straight copolymer or even fluorocarbon. And honestly, predominantly, I throw copolymer. But that's just my fishing style. It's just like we could get on a, you know, a debate as to if we liked copolymer versus fluorocarbon better for swim baits. It's based on your personal preference and probably, honestly, what you've had success with. If you've had success with one or the other, you're definitely going to vouch that that one is your preferred method to go. And you have every right to, and all the reasons to, because that's where your success lies. So I hope that information kind of sets it as far as like when you're looking for the rod and the reel, because, you know, that's one of the big key things that I personally look for myself. So I do have one more rod and reel that we'll talk about, and that is my rod and reel that I throw my glide baits on. All right, so the last rod that I have right now for this year, may pick another rod up, who knows, we'll see. But this is the Leviathan. This is the Omega Heavy Swimbait Rod, and it's a heavy action, moderate fast, 2 to 6 ounce bait. And I've got it paired up with the Daiwa Tatula 300 8-to-1 gear ratio. All right, so I am gonna brag on the rod a lot, and I'm gonna brag on the reel, because without a doubt, this is my personal favorite setup to throw anything from, let's say, 3 to 5 ounces on a glide bait. Without a doubt, hands down, I will take this every single day of the week. So, now why? Because I have lost less fish on this rod than I have every other rod. This rod, it's just the way the rod loads and unloads when you're fighting the fish. Truth be told, I got this rod for my birthday, and it was kind of me treating myself, so to speak. I cannot speak highly enough of this rod. It's a phenomenal rod. This is, when I got this rod, I was throwing the Jethro, the 6.0 Jethro. The 7.5 hadn't been released or created at the time. So when I was throwing this rod, it was literally, you know, I was throwing just about everything on the 795 Dobyns. I already had the reel. So what happened was, I went to the lake one day and I lost 3 fish on that Dobyns. Now, this could have been user error, and I completely acknowledge that. So I ended up, you know, kind of getting a little bit frustrated as to why am I losing fish. And these are not, you know, I'm not going to say that they were giants, because they weren't, but, you know, anywhere from a 3 to 4, let's just say 2 to 4 pound class fish. You don't like losing fish. Now, a big bait is notorious, because if you let off the reel, if you give them enough slack, they'll sling the bait. No, yeah, and I get that, and I completely agree with that. But I just, I started losing some fish. So I came up with the idea, I'm gonna buy a Leviathan. I've heard really good reviews of Leviathan, you know, Swimbait Universe. A lot of people raved about the Leviathan Swimbait rods. And I'd actually discovered this company about 3 years ago when Dad and I started building baits, and I said that if we ever, you know, got successful with, like, the baits would start catching some fish, at some point I would buy a Leviathan. Well, I caught the 6.5 on that 795 Dobyns Fury. So that same day, I lost a 4, maybe a 5 on the 795 Dobyns Fury. That footage is also in there with that 6.5 getting caught. But, you know, and then I hooked another fish that I lost that day. So I caught the 6.5 and I lost 2 that same day. You know, and then another day, it was a very similar situation. I actually lost 2 or 3 that I can remember, and I think I caught 1 on the Dobyns. So it's like I said, it may have been user error, me, you know, still getting used to everything, but I'm inclined to believe that there was something to it of the rod, because since I have been using the Leviathan, I have lost 1 fish that actually hooked up. You know, I've heard a lot of people say this, and I completely agree with them. Hookup to land ratio versus your hookup ratio. The point where this rod pays off, it is not hooking the fish. Once you know, getting the fish to actually attack the bait and get hooked, that's not where this rod pays off. This rod pays off when that fish catches the bait and starts the fight. It is from the moment that the hookup happens to getting that fish in the boat. That is where this rod pays off. This rod is a completely parabolic rod. It loads deep into the blank. It almost folds in on itself. It's like I said, I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to sell a rod, because I'm not. It's just, I am that impressed with this rod for the 6.0 and 7.5 Jethro. Phenomenal rod. It loads perfectly for what I needed it for. So it serves its purpose for me. But like I said, this is a really nice rod. It's personally my favorite rod that I have, period, across even my conventional tackle that I do still have. But this is my favorite combo that I have. So, hello, Otis. Hello. Would you like to say hello? Come here. Come here. All right, don't come here. Otis has decided to say hello to everyone. This is Otis. He's a 3-year-old beagle, but he's a sweet beagle. And he's having plenty of excitement because people are out walking in the sunshine today, so he's getting a workout and, you know, vocal exercises. But okay, so I really appreciate everyone taking some time to watch today's video. I know it's a little bit of a long one, and I've enjoyed talking to everyone about it. Please feel free to, you know, drop me any questions. If you have any questions about any of the rods, reels, any of that stuff, be more than happy to answer it and help you as best I can. You know, I'm not sponsored by any of these products. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, so I can give you my honest review. And that's one of the things that I do enjoy doing, where I can give you just honest feedback. And this is stuff I personally use. It's not stuff that's just sitting on a shelf and I'm taking it out here to shoot a video with it. I use it. You've seen multiple videos with me throwing the Leviathan. I got it in July of last year, so I've had it for about 6 months. You know, and hopefully if I can get the boat back, it's going to be back on the water as soon as possible. And we're getting ready to get into full-blown big bait season. You know, March is on its way, and March here is our pre-spawn month, and I want to be on the water for pre-spawn. I really want to break a 6.5, and if I don't get it in pre-spawn, it's going to be a little bit harder until we get back to December. So fingers crossed we can do that. But you know, I've been thinking about doing some bonus videos here and there, but I want to do them kind of based upon what you all might have some interest in. So down in the comments down below, if you could leave me, you know, just some of the topics that you're interested in. It could be glides, it could be crank downs, hooks, soft baits. I'll give you my opinion on it. I may not have a great deal of knowledge in the subject yet, but I'd be more than happy to do a bonus video on that, and then hopefully for our next normally scheduled video on the 3rd Monday of February, we'll be back out on the water. But I do want, you know, I enjoyed doing the Alabama rig bonus video based upon a comment that was in the that January, or the first Monday of January video. I really enjoyed that, and you know, I loved getting to read people's comments. I actually had a couple of people reach out to me and ask for some suggestions on how to set up their A-rig. So I really enjoyed doing that, and I love us building up a community and where we can just talk together and we can all grow together as fishermen. So if you have any ideas, any topics or any questions, anything like that that we could do a video on, you know, be more than happy to. And maybe it's a Q&A kind of hodgepodge of different topics, you know, we can do one of those too. So just leave me some ideas down below if you have any topics or interests that you'd love to get to hear about, and we'll try to do another video kind of on a bonus segment, and we'll get that out there. But hey, I appreciate everyone taking some time to watch today's video. Really do appreciate it. I hope some of this information helps you, especially if you're kind of going into, I know that there's a lot of expos going on right now, so I hope you can use some of this information. Maybe you're looking into your first purchase, or maybe you're looking into you know, an upgrade from your current gear, you know. So I hope this information finds you, and it helps you look throughout this process to be able to find exactly what you're looking for. But if you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. That helps the algorithm to help more people find the video. And then if you'll hit that little subscribe button, that just helps us grow our channel to where we can reach more people, and it also helps you get notifications as to when new videos come out. But hey, really appreciate you watching. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.